Hello and welcome back to my channel. In this video, we will be discussing the three works of a river. Let us examine the three vehicles being shown. Each of these vehicles is carrying out a different function or work. The vehicle at the top is an excavator, which digs and lifts away material from the ground. The second vehicle is a moving truck, which carries load from one place to another. The third vehicle is a dumper trailer, which dumps material which has been transported from another location. Rivers also carry out these three functions. They detach and lift materials. They move materials from one place to another. And they drop materials in new locations. For the vehicles to carry out their functions, they need to have energy. Energy is the ability to do work. The energy used by the vehicles is obtained from fuel. Rivers also need energy to carry out their work. A river possesses a potential energy by virtue of its height above sea level. Potential energy is stored energy. Potential energy changes depending on the river's height or distance, as well as its mass. That is the volume of the river. This means that at higher levels and at greater volumes, the river has more potential energy. The force of gravity enables the river to convert its potential energy into kinetic energy. So, as gravity pulls water down the slope, the water's potential energy changes to kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is energy that can do work. It is energy actively being used for movement. Kinetic energy changes depending on the river's speed and its mass, that is, its volume. So the higher the velocity of a river, the greater is its energy and the greater is its ability to do work. Let's now examine each of these three works or functions in greater details. Fluvial erosion is the detachment and lifting of material from the river's bed and sides, as well as from the load being carried. Fluvial erosion can lengthen, deepen, or widen the river channel. Headward erosion is the cutting back of the river into the rock and soil at its headwaters in the opposite direction of its flow. This helps to lengthen the river channel. Headward erosion also occurs at waterfalls where the river cuts back into the rock as it falls over the steep bed. In this process, a gorge can be formed. Vertical erosion is the down-cutting and deepening of the riverbed. This occurs in the upper course of a river and is responsible for the formation of landforms such as waterfalls, rapids, and gorges, as well as potholes. Lateral erosion is the process by which the sides of a river channel are worn away by the river. This occurs in the middle and lower courses of the river and is responsible for the formation of landforms such as meanders, oxbow lakes, and river cliffs. There are four methods by which the river erodes. These include attrition, abrasion, hydraulic action, and solution. Attrition is where materials being carried by the river collide into each other and break into smaller fragments. Now, this process does not erode the bed and bank, but simply erodes the material being carried, causing it to become smaller and more rounded as they move downstream. Next, we have abrasion, which is also called corrosion. And this is where materials being carried by the river are thrown against the river's bed and banks, wearing them away. Hydraulic action is the process by which the pressure of water breaks away rock particles from the riverbed and banks. The force of the water hits the river banks or bed and then pushes water into the cracks. In the process, air becomes compressed, increasing the pressure and the river bank or bed may in time collapse. Hydraulic action is most effective when the velocity of the river is high. Finally, there is the process of solution, which is a chemical process. Solution is also called corrosion and is the process by which water reacts with minerals in the rock, causing them to slowly decompose. For example, carbon dioxide dissolved in the river forms a weak acid. This weak acid can then react with carbonate rocks such as limestone and chalk. And now we move on to the process of transportation. Transportation is a process by which the river moves its load from one part of the channel to another part. This movement may be along the long profile of the river as well as along the cross profile. Now, the processes of transportation includes solution. Solution is the process by which the river carries microscopic materials such as minerals which have been dissolved in the water. This is often not visible. Then there is suspension. Suspension is a process by which silt and clay sized particles are lifted by the water, and because they are light, they remain afloat in the water and therefore are carried by the water. This usually gives a muddy appearance to the water. Saltation is a process by which materials such as pebbles or even large sands, which are light enough, are lifted by the water, but are at the same time too heavy to remain afloat, and therefore they are dropped again. Therefore, the materials move along the bed in a hopping or bouncing motion. Finally, there is the process of traction. Traction is when large materials such as boulders, which are too heavy for the river to lift, are rolled and pushed along the riverbed by the force of the river. This process of transportation only occurs when the river has high volumes, and this usually happens after heavy rains. Now, erosion and transportation require energy to occur. When energy is lost or is absent, then deposition will occur. So, deposition is a process by which materials, which can no longer be transported by the river, is dropped due to a decrease in the river's energy. A river can lose its energy when its velocity, volume, or gradient decreases, when friction increases, as well as when the river encounters another body of water, for example, at its mouth. During the process of the the material may become sorted. Sorting describes the distribution of grain size in the deposited material. Deposits can be well sorted, moderately sorted, as well as poorly sorted. The degree of sorting depends on certain factors, such as the rate or duration of deposition. When materials are gradually dropped, they tend to be deposited in a well sorted manner from large to small grains. However, when materials are suddenly dropped, they are often deposited in a poorly sorted manner. Deposition therefore varies in both time and space. It is dominant in the lower course of the river under certain conditions. For example, in a meandering stream, materials are eroded from the outer banks and carried towards the inner banks by helicoidal flow, where it is deposited to form slip off slopes. On the inside bank or bend of the river, the water is more sluggish and therefore has very little energy to transport the materials. Another common location where materials are deposited is at the mouth of the river. This is where the river meets the sea. The river's velocity is reduced as the sea waves and tides oppose the flow of the river. As such, materials are dropped at the mouth of the river, often forming depositional features such as deltas. The amount of deposition also varies from time to time. So, for example, during times of floods, deposition may occur. When there is a lot of rain, the water level rises in the channel and overflows the banks, carrying material with it in the process. Along the bank, the river becomes shallow and friction is therefore high. This slows the river down, causing materials to be dropped. This is responsible for the development of levees as well as floodplains. Materials can also be deposited during times of drought. So during the heavy flow, the material is able to transport a lot. The river is able to transport a lot of materials. When the volume decreases during the dry season, the river is unable to continue the transport of this material and therefore will drop the material on the riverbed. This is how braided channels develop in the river. Okay, so those are the three processes or the three functions or works of the river. Thank you for watching, and I hope that this information was useful.